It's time for the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA,
Agent Ether,
and Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to check us out on other social media platforms like Discord and Facebook. This week's episode, the Georgia Guidestones. We weren't planning on doing this topic originally, but seeing as how they just got blown up, I wanted to do sort of an honorary episode on the Georgia Guidestones because they're just kind of like a really cool, mysterious, fun thing that's not like all that cool or mysterious, but still, they got blown up, so I wanted to talk about them.
So apparently they're America's Stonehenge?
A little more humble than Stonehenge.
Well, I'd never heard of it before this.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah, I didn't even know they existed until they got blown up, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's.
I had heard of them before, and like there's so many like I don't know, like kind of like just weird like stuff surrounding this. Like people have some weird interpretations of what this is supposed to be. Some people think it's like, related to aliens and stuff, and no, it's not.
Yeah,
not that I can see at least, but.
Probably not.
But yeah, it is a well-made piece, memorial, like, or not memorial, like a granite structure. I mean, it was well made. Yep. But I don't know if I don't know. We'll get into all the inscriptions and stuff like that, and what we think about them. But
well, yeah, and even why it was erected was not an intense purpose to be hateful, or nobody goes there to hang out to have their evil meetings or whatnot. But yeah.
Some people say it's satanic and stuff. I don't know if I see any evidence for that.
I would totally go there to do a seance.
But, people have their... Yeah. Well, not anymore.
No.
That's true.
She gone.
You can still go to the spot. I mean...
So what? It got blown up, right? But then they had to demolition it.
Yeah, they blew it up a little bit. Somebody blew it up a little bit. We're not quite sure who, even though there's video cameras. And then I guess the remaining part of it was sort of unstable, so they had to demolish it because it's like a tourist attraction, and it would have been dangerous. It might, had the potential of falling on somebody, so I guess they had to let it go.
And that thing wasn't a small firecracker, so whatever blew that thing up was
a decent explosion,
pipe bomb. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a...
It almost looked like an actual professional, stick of, debt charge or whatever. But
yeah, it could have been C4 or something.
Looked like it.
It could have been dynamite or C4, whatever it was pretty powerful. I mean, to take out like a large granite slab like that, you got to have some serious firepower. You know what I mean? And I think that them taking it down and removing it was actually the responsible thing to do, just like Agent Anderson said. I mean, people do go there a lot, and if the structure is unstable, I mean, those are some big pieces of granite. So if any of that was to fall over on somebody, you probably wouldn't survive, you know what I mean? Or it would at least greatly injure you, I mean,
you don't want any of that smoke if you're the representative for that park, trying to make people's safety priority.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, the land was owned by the county, I think.
Yeah, let's actually get a little bit into the history of that, because it was not originally owned by the county. Okay. They gave it to the county. Yes. So we're talking about Elbert County in Georgia. The Georgia Guidestones themselves, it was a monument built in 1980. In total, it was about 19 feet, 3 inches tall, and it was made from 6 granite slabs with a total weight of 237,746 pounds. So we're talking about,
that's a huge bitch.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about like slabs that are 19 feet tall. That's why, they demoed it. They didn't want that falling on people. The monument itself appears to be something built with instructions for people who survived some sort of apocalyptic event, like a nuclear holocaust or something. Has these instructions inscribed on the stone, because you might imagine stone would withstand quite a lot more than, let's say, a book or, something like that. And that's maybe the idea behind it. In June of 1979, a man named Robert C. Christian, which is a pseudonym. I mean, it says right on there on the Georgia Guidestones that it's a pseudonym. On behalf of an anonymous group of loyal Americans, went and contacted a company to build this. And he said that the purpose of the stones was a compass, calendar, and clock, which has that built into the structure, or had. But it also, the most important thing of it was like the message. Nobody went there because they needed a clock, That wasn't the point of the thing.
I read that the company thought it was a joke, so they quoted him some astronomical price.
Yeah, and he accepted it.
Yeah, they're like, this would normally cost like $10,000, but this guy seems like a little loopy, so they're like, $150,000. The guy's,
it seems to me like they kind of didn't want to do it at first, and that's why they gave him that quote.
Yeah, that's the impression I get, was that they didn't actually they don't want anything to do with it, so they just they jacked up the quote to something ridiculous, which we don't know the exact number, but it was over $100,000, which would be in today's money something like $300,000 or $350,000 minimum. So nice chunk of change there. It's not astronomical as far as these things go, but it's a lot of money for the average person anyways.
Yeah.
The idea was to build it to withstand catastrophic events, but a little tiny explosion took it out, so I'm not sure it was all that successful as far as that goes.
I don't know. It wasn't too tiny of an explosion. It had some serious force behind it, I think.
Yeah. So the dude wanted to build something like Stonehenge, but with a message, because he said that Stonehenge was cool and all, but there was no message there. It was just a bunch of dumb rocks.
Is that what he said? Dumb rock?
Yeah, that's an exact quote there.
Okay, good.
The guy who worked for Elbert Granite, that's the company, was named Joe Fendley, Fendly. And that's who kind of took the order and acted as I don't know if he owns the company or if he was just like a salesman. I have no idea. But that's who talked to Robert Christian to get the dimensions and all, what to build and all that stuff. Robert told Joe that he was part of a group that had planned to build the monument for about 20 years and that they wanted to remain anonymous. And also that they had chosen Elbert County because there was a lot of granite there. It was rural, and Robert had family ties in the area. Which it's like, okay, that's I guess if you're going to choose a place to build a monument,
why not?
Yeah, might as well go with somewhere with a lot of granite, I guess.
Well, maybe there's other reasons. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. The rural actually makes sense because if you put it in, the middle of a major city like, Los Angeles or New York or San Francisco, if there's a nuclear holocaust, those are going to be your main targets. So you wouldn't want it somewhere in the middle of the main city. You'd want it out in the middle of nowhere, basically.
I would think it would be subject to more graffiti too if it was in the middle of the city versus the occasional graffiti it got.
Yeah. It didn't actually. It got a few occasions that I found online, but it was not like a constant thing.
No.
So that maybe that factored into it as well. As far as him having family in the area, though, I think he might have been fibbing about that, because if I wanted to remain anonymous, I would throw a false lead like that. I would say, oh yeah, I totally have family in this area, and that's why I wanted to build it here,
Well, we are all children of God, so that's what he meant.
Well, I guess maybe that counts, yeah. The land itself was bought from a local farmer, but he gave the farmer and the farmer's children lifetime grazing rights for their cattle. As far as the monument itself, Robert provided 10 pages of specifications and a scale model of the monument for them to be able to build it accurately. They're located, the Guidestone, it's hard to get it's funny because when I was writing my notes here, it's like, it's the Georgia Guidestones, but it's a singular item. So I kept messing up my things here. So I put were, but was. The Georgia Guidestones was located off of Route 77, about 7 miles north of Elberton, the city, not the county. The monument was unveiled by Congressman Doug Bernard on March 22nd, 1980. And I thought that was a strange detail. Like, well, if a congressman is involved, maybe he's part of this secret group who wants to put these stones up. I never, was able to find, I didn't have that much time to look into it, but I was unable to find what his involvement was specifically. How did they get him involved, and why was he there for the opening ceremony? I don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe you guys saw something on that. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I had that same question. I was like, why are they making this such a big deal? Like, I mean, for some anonymous group of people led by an anonymous individual that has a pseudonym as a name that he's giving, like, if they're going to build this, okay, go ahead and build it. But like, why was it like made such a big deal? Why was there a congressman there? You know what I mean? To begin with. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It kind of seemed a little weird to me.
Yeah. Cause I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Congressman, we're not talking about like a little league coach, we're talking about the major leagues here. This is a pretty important individual.
Yeah. It's not like whether it be a little league coach or a mayor, or something like that. It's not, it was a congressman. It's like, wow, they're making a big deal out of this, So I actually kind of agree with that. Excuse me. Sorry. I agree with that. I think that this congressman may have been involved in it. Like, he might have been part of the anonymous group that funded this.
Right.
I don't know. I was kind of thinking it's just good publicity for the election or re-election.
Well,
no, you don't think so?
That too.
Could be.
But if you're not associated, what's the point?
I mean, well, we'll get into what the 10 items on the we'll get into that. I don't know if this would be a good move for a politician to be involved with this. I'll just leave it at that. During the opening ceremony, they read a statement from the anonymous group that funded the monument, and the statement was, "In order to avoid debate, we, the sponsors of the Georgia Guidestones, have a simple message for human beings now and for the future. We believe our precepts are sound and they must stand on their own merits." Now, this is where, to me, it sounds like an alien did this, because if you did this,
beings?
Yeah, why would you say human beings, right? Because you would only say that if you weren't human. So aliens, reptilians did it. Yeah.
Like Zuckerberg.
Yeah. That's who I knew it. It was Zuckerberg all along.
Oh my God. It's those smoked meats.
Yeah. So they had inscribed on the monument, a message in 8 different languages. The languages were English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. And I guess the point was to put it in the languages that would cover as many people on the planet as possible, so that if there was some kind of catastrophe, people would be able to actually read what was on there. But I got to be honest, if there's a nuclear war, I don't think most of these are going to be like English and Spanish, but all this other stuff, maybe Hebrew. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of people around speaking Arabic or Russian, I guess, in this area that survived. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
That's a good point about it being in the area. I was thinking more, well, there's a lot of people who speak Arabic around the world. I think it was to touch most people globally, which is kind of funny because it has such a specific location.
Yeah, how are Russian survivors going to get to Georgia? It doesn't make any sense, right?
Hell, but unless we get invaded by Russia, like during that nuclear war or something.
Well, thank God we put that.
All right, let's talk about there were 10 items to guide humanity inscribed on the monuments. And let's talk about these maybe one at a time, because some of these a little bit controversial. So the first one is maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Now, this one is very often misinterpreted as having the suggestion that we should cull the population until there are only 500 million people left. I don't think that's what he meant. I think this was for after a catastrophe happened and it knocked our population down to very few people. This was a guideline, meaning don't let the population grow over 500 million. What do you guys think about this one?
I agree with that. And some people have they think that this is like a, something that like a eugenicist would propose, you know what I mean? Now, I don't know if I necessarily disagree with that. As far as the perpetual balance with nature part, I would say, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't you want to be in balance with nature, I guess, to a certain extent, but humans don't necessarily excel at that type of thing. You know what I mean? But I mean, if it was after a great catastrophe, such as a nuclear war, what have you, I don't think you'd have to worry too much about the culling of the population, because there'd be a lot of population gone, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you what the right balance would be. I have no freaking clue. You know what I mean? How many people should be on the earth, you know? I do think that we, in certain areas for sure of the world, we do have overpopulation. There's no doubt about that. And that can bring, you know, who knows how many problems along with it, you know, like, but so I think that, I don't know, it's like making sure there's not overpopulation is valuable, but how do you do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
how did they
how do you do that responsibly and fairly? Like,
exactly. And how did you arrive at that number? Why not, you know, if you're determining some number that's ideal or optimal for the planet, why not 687,395,512 or something, right? Why did they get
right? Yeah.
Why exactly 500 million? How did they determine that number? I mean, I guess maybe they just pulled it out of thin air. They said, okay, well, what do you think would be a good number for a population? 500 million? Yeah, sure. What sounds good to me. Why not? You know, I don't know. I don't know where they get that from.
Yeah, and then like I said before, like once like you have large enough populations around the world, in order to actually like maintain that number or what have you, you'd probably have to do some rather nefarious stuff. You know what I mean? As far as like the laws you put in place and how you would have to control people in order to stop them from having babies, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think. I mean, it'd be a ugly situation, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that brings us to number 2, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Like, what exactly does that mean though? You know what I mean? Like,
who's going to guide reproduction? Yeah. That suggests that the government should guide reproduction because it's not going to be your next door neighbor or somebody across the planet. Yeah. That means there has to be I don't think it says in the guides, the 10 items, it doesn't say there. But the whole thing suggests that there's going to be a one world government, a new world order. That's sort of a lot of the conspiracies surrounding this is sort of the suggestion of a one world government controlling this stuff. But how do you decide who gets to reproduce? Guide reproduction wisely? And how do you decide what fitness? Are you talking about fitness? Do you mean like I don't know,
physical fitness or mental fitness or or what?
Do you mean like fitness as far as like I don't know, Brock Lesnar, or more like I don't know, Israel Adesanya? There's two completely different versions of fitness. One of them is on the juice. One of them might be on the juice.
Yeah, they might both be on the juice. I don't know. It's something like, what is it called? Gynoclastomia or whatever the hell. There's been a couple of fights where when Adesanya cut weight, he had a little bit of a titty.
Oh yeah.
He did. Yeah, he had a little bubble going on or something.
Well, gynoclastomia is not something that just like randomly pops up. His excuse was that he smoked like a lot of weed and that's how he got it.
Yeah,
sure.
Like, what?
Those nipples looking a little puffy there. Okay, so maybe that was a bad example. Okay, how about instead?
How about like a Brock Lesnar as opposed to like Nate Diaz?
Yes, there you go. That's exactly what I was going to say. Nate or Nick, either one. That's exactly what I was going to say. So how do you decide?
They're all on steroids.
What is the ideal version of fitness? Because in reality, there's a lot of different physiques. And they're valid for different things,
As far as population control goes, there are ways of controlling the population, such as allocation of resources, forced birth control. None of it's very pretty.
Yeah, it becomes problematic immediately.
Oh, by the way, on a little side note, did you happen to hear that Nate Diaz just got signed to fight Khamzat Chimaev?
No kidding.
Oh.
Wow.
Yep, because he's been I mean, maybe we'll edit this out. I don't know, but he's been trying to get released from the UFC for a long time here. Like he just wants a fight so he can end his contract, I guess. Nate Diaz does, and then they give him Khamzat Chimaev. It's like, oh fuck, dude.
Well, that's what they do
sucks.
Though. Like that's what they do. If you're in the UFC, any athlete in the UFC that does not, do exactly what Dana wants them to, they give them the middle finger, just, it's bad. But one show I was listening to, I think it was MMA Nuts. I forget which show, but one podcast I was listening to said that wouldn't it be great if Nate shows up for the fight, the bell rings, the round starts, and he immediately just goes down to one knee, taps out, and then walks out. Just leaves. That's his fight. That'd be great.
That would be hilarious. Also, a little disappointing. Like I don't know. I'm a fan of both these guys, but I'm a much bigger fan of Nate Diaz because of just the history he has in the sport, and he seems like a really, like, I don't know, he's a real motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, but anyways, like, I don't want to see him get his ass beat by Khamzat Chimaev. Like, I think that's going to happen. Like,
well, how could you not be a fan of Nate Diaz? I mean, he's a very likable guy as far as MMA personalities go. But all right, anyways, let's get back to the Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah, let's get back to what this episode is actually about. Yeah, my bad.
We could talk MMA all night, but that's a whole other podcast. So, number 3, unite humanity with a living new language.
And only one.
Well,
that sounds weird.
It doesn't seem to me. This doesn't mean that we should get rid of all other languages. To me, this seems to suggest just to come up with a language that everybody can speak. Kind of like in Indonesia, they have Indonesians, but then every little locality might also have their own languages. Not Indonesian is not the native language everywhere. But most people in the country are going to speak at least a little bit of that, so everybody can talk to each other, in the same nation. I get the impression that's what they mean, but it's not that specific. What do you guys think?
I think in order to create an entirely new living language, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what that means, like a living new language.
Well, this kind of reminds me, we were talking about the Voynich manuscripts.
Yeah.
And we were discussing that in terms of, they were saying, one of the ideas was that it was in fact its language of its own.
Yeah. Well, I think so a dead language would be like Latin, I think. Like some people can know it and speak it. I was
gonna say that. But yes.
It's more or less a dead language. Totally, so I guess by living language, they mean something that people actually use. That's, I guess. I mean,
and that will live on and keep going. And
I don't know. So it wouldn't necessarily be like a brand new language that was developed. It would be a language that already existed, maybe, that everybody could agree on or something.
English.
Oh God, no. English is the worst. It does. You know how you spell phonics in English? You spell it with a PH. Okay, that's all I got to say about English, and that's why it should not be a universal language. It doesn't make any damn sense at all. That's why. All right, so rule number 4: rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason.
That sounds like maybe self-control to me.
Yeah, I see coexistence, understanding. I mean, they're definitely not hard rules to follow, right? And they seem to all have some sort of, good intentions behind all of them, right? You would want to think.
Yeah, you would hope.
Okay. Number 5, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Now, this is they're all kind of like this. All of these ideas, it sounds great. That sounds wonderful. But how do you do that? How do you protect all people and nations with fair laws and just courts when a law that's fair in one place is completely unfair in another? These are all like this. So they're all very vague.
Universal courts imply universal laws, where everybody agrees that it should be the same.
Yeah.
And I just find it hard to believe, even with a population of only 500 million, that 500 million people could, in fact, come to an agreement on that.
You couldn't get 10 people to come to an agreement. You couldn't get 10 people from the same city to come to an agreement, let alone 500 million people from all over the world. It's an impossible task. And that's what, when I read through these, that's what I mean. Like it sounds great. It sounds fantastic and wonderful. And yeah, let's be fair laws and just courts. But he doesn't propose any possible way of that actually happening. He didn't figure out the how, just the, gee, wouldn't it be nice if, You know what this reminds me of is remember we did that episode on the creation of the Federal Reserve and how they would sell it as one thing. It's like, oh, this sounds great. It's a Federal Reserve, but it turns out it's not actually federal and it doesn't have any reserves. Or like how in order to pass the law, Senator Aldrich, who everybody hated, You know, he had to pretend to be against it, even though he was the person behind it. But he came out publicly saying, oh, this is horrible. Don't do this. Don't ever let this pass. And then, of course, because he was against it, everybody's like, yeah, let's do it. But anyways, some of this kind of stinks like that. Like, they're selling a one world government as protecting people and nations with fair laws and just courts. But you know damn well if there's a one world government, that's not what would happen, right? It would be the most draconian administration the world has ever seen. You know, you could sell that as something that sounds great, but the only way to really enact that would be to basically just wipe out everybody that doesn't agree with you. You know, even if everybody's already been wiped out. Well, if there's 10 people left that don't agree with this, in order to make this fair, we need to get rid of them, you know? Like that's one way to interpret it. It just reminded me of that, of the Federal Reserve, just how they sold that and how it was not what it seemed on its face.
What's that Stephen King book where everybody dies? I know that's kind of vague. From a virus.
The Stand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of The Stand, too.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I know this is going to be hard.
Nah, there's not that many where everybody dies, you know.
That was one long book.
Oh, boy, was it.
Took me a long time to get through it.
All right, let's get on to the next one, which is the sixth one, which is let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Now, this immediately brought to mind the version I would like to see enacted, which is, have you guys seen that movie Robo Jocks or Robot Jocks? I forget which.
Oh my gosh.
Is it from the 80s?
Yeah. Oh boy,
they had those like those big giant mech warriors. Yeah, I remember that movie, dude.
Like they did battle to settle their dispute.
That movie's so good.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's awesome. So there was an international court, and if there was a dispute between nations, instead of going to war, they would each have a robot that would fight in an arena, and whoever won the robot fight basically won the dispute. So instead of a court of law or whatever, you would have this robot fight. I'm like, dude, that's so genius. That's the best way to resolve anything, is just have a robot fight.
Had that.
Whoever wins the robot fight wins the dispute. That's beautiful. It's simple. It's elegant. It's an elegant solution, and it would work.
Well, but the one problem with that though is like, you might actually have somebody on some site who actually is right, and even if they lose, like, you know, they're not right. You know, like, even though they
giant robots fighting, dude. Come on.
Okay. You know what? Okay. You know what? You're right, dude. No, you know what?
I'm just kidding. Yeah. But in all seriousness, though, what do you guys think of this one? Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court.
Well, that just sounds like don't go to war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah. And don't wage war with each other, of course, as he said, and also don't keep wrecking Mother Earth with your bombs, bro.
I found it interesting though that they're talking about all nations. Like, how many nations do you expect you're going to have and be able to unite them under one world order?
Right.
Like, what's that number that you're thinking of? Maybe give us a range so we know. Is it 5? Is it 20? Is it 100?
And
how does that agree with us?
How does this world court resolve disputes? What sort of lever do they have? What kind of carrot and stick do they use to keep people in line? Because because the world court says so doesn't mean people are going to do so.
Well, and we've seen, you know, like organizations like, for example, after World War I, the League of Nations was a complete failure.
Yeah.
And like, you know, NATO isn't necessarily, you know, a success. That's for sure. You know, like, and so how do you get everybody on board, you know, on the same page? You know, I don't know if that's necessarily possible.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
I mean, there has to be a good reason, obviously, right? I mean, some sort of main bad guy, main evil that would convince everybody that it's just to do so, right? So
yeah,
hopefully there's not an intergalactic threat on the way that we have to join sides. Forget all our squabbles.
Well, I was just going to say,
remind me of that Beastie Boys song.
I was just going to say, the only scenario I can imagine where all of our nations would join forces would be something like Independence Day, where we had a serious and destructive threat from an extraterrestrial species. Other than that, I can't see us getting along to the point where we can agree on some sort of world court. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to be top dog. Everybody wants to have their their moment in the light.
Everybody wants to be the swinging dick. Everybody wants to be in control, right?
Well, you could just think of,
but not Little Rocket Man.
Like just an obvious example. It would be something like, a European or Western nation that believes that divorce should be something everybody has access to versus a religious nation who believes that divorce should not be something that everybody has access to. There's no way those two sides are going to see eye to eye on that topic. It's just not going to happen. So what do you do when you have something like that where, and I'm not saying one side is right and one side is wrong. I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying there's no way they're going to agree on something like that. There is no compromise. It's this way or that way. So how do you compromise on that? It just doesn't make any sense. All right. So number 7, avoid petty laws and useless officials. But again, it doesn't define what's a petty law. Is that like...
That's like, don't spit on the sidewalk or we'll cane you.
Is it like no California stops at stop signs? Because you know what? Even though everybody loves the California stop, and yet that probably has saved pedestrian lives on occasion when people weren't paying attention and they stopped at the stop sign and didn't run over that kid in front of their car. So what is a petty law? There's no way to define that. It's silly. And useless officials, well, I mean, I could think of useless officials, but yeah.
I'm going to drive drunk because, I don't care. DUIs, that's a petty law.
Yeah. So number 8, balance personal rights with social duties. What do you guys think of that one?
I don't know. Right before the show, I took some duties.
Oh.
I cracked the porcelain, dude.
those are community duties, right? Not personal. Wait.
Yeah, no, it's personal.
Well,
Ethan's just shaking her head over there.
I'm sorry, dude. Toilet humor.
Boys.
I excel at toilet humor.
Ether, we do need your opinion. We need the female perspective on social duties.
Okay, so this one I think is the greater good. It's a question of the greater good. Where do your rights end and someone else's begin? Are you thinking about the big picture?
Yeah, but again, it seems to me like one of these things that can only be done with a one world government. And it's selling this as like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. But then when you stop to think about it, wait, what would that actually look like if you actually enacted that through a one world government? Like, that might not look so pretty, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, they're guide stones, so these are just guide lines, not laws.
You have to assume that the person or people behind this, they actually intended them to be enacted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance personal rights with social duties? What does that mean? What is a social duty, right? Is it like on Seinfeld where when somebody's getting mugged, they just stand there laughing at them? You know what I mean? Like, even though those characters in that show, it seems like a ridiculous example, but let's think about that for a second. Those characters in that show, let's say they weren't laughing, even if they were just standing there, they don't know how to deal with a combat situation. They don't know how to deal with somebody who has a weapon, and they don't know what to do in a situation where that's happening. So should they go and figuratively jump on the grenade and sacrifice their lives to stop that person from getting their purse stolen or whatever it was? Or what exactly is their social duty in that situation? It's a very tricky question because there are a lot of scenarios you can envision where it's not exactly clear what your social duty should be. Should it be just to report that the crime happened and to observe so you could identify the suspect later on? Or is your duty to stop it from happening? And let's think of a more extreme crime.
Is your duty as a civilian or what have you, a citizen, not to do that crime to begin with? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but the people that are actually doing the crime, right?
But that stuff will happen. That stuff will always happen. So it's I don't know. It's a sticky one, right?
I don't know how you balance that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. You could say nowadays you shouldn't be beating up old ladies and stealing their purses, but it's going to happen again. It's just
that's a
part of life,
law.
unfortunately.
No, you definitely do that. And if you are somebody who does that,
shame on you.
I don't have any whatever happens to you, however violent it may be as a consequence, I don't feel sorry for you at all. You chose to do that.
Yeah. We got 2 more on the list.
We can do it.
Let's get through them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we got number 9, prize truth, beauty, and love. No, there's no and in there. I'm trying to read it verbatim. So prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Infinite.
What are you?
Infinite.
What are you, a freaking hippie?
I know, right?
Who wrote this?
This was made by a bunch of hippies.
That's why.
Yeah. Prize truth. Like, what does that mean? Wait. Like, you
prize
need
the truth, man.
Yeah.
Well, you need to, like, I don't know, like whatever your truth is, I guess. You like, or I don't know, like, what does that mean? You know,
well,
prize truth.
And that's like,
prize it.
If I walk up to a stranger and I say, "Do you have any nude selfies on your phone?" Do they have to tell me the truth? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
dude, those go up to the cloud. Nobody should have nude selfies on their phone.
Nobody should. That's true. But you just be like, yes, of course I have a dick pic on my phone, and I'm going to tell you all about it. No, it's like, yeah.
I prize that. I'm not going to share that. That's a prize for somebody else.
But what does that mean? Prize?
Yeah, no,
truth,
I still take my dick pics with Polaroids because it's not on the cloud. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the way to do it, I think.
Send them in the mail.
I mean, you know, it's like using a VPN. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Speaking of VPNs, boy, have we got it. No, I'm just kidding. Have we got a deal for you? But yeah, the rest of this,
that's a good segue.
It's pretty vague.
Don't want your dick pics getting out?
Beauty, love, seeking harmony. What does that even mean? What is beauty and love?
It almost seems a little naive.
It does seem naive. Yes.
Maybe it just refers to a state of mind.
Maybe.
Like a higher state of mind. And what makes me think that is the word infinite.
Yeah, seeking harmony with
infinite.
Seeking harmony with the infinite. That's
implying something bigger than yourself, not necessarily God, although it could be God.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like a higher level of thinking.
Yeah.
Making peace with death, or like what's to come, the infinite that, you know, awaits us all.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
All right.
I don't know, man.
And number 10, be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. It says it twice.
Did they die writing that? It sounds like they're dying right there. That's their last words.
Yeah.
Love each other.
I don't disagree with that. Like number 10, like be not a cancer on the earth. Okay. I mean, I don't know exactly what that means.
Stop using nukes. Stop the fires. Stop.
Yeah. Well, to me, it kind of, the
pollution. Be a solution, not the pollution.
When I read that, I think of pollution, like, because I mean, think what you want to think about, like, you know, like climate change and stuff like that. There's no doubt that the human race has done great damage to different environments through pollution and stuff. You know,
to ecosystems.
I mean, just think about, like, you know, the Gulf of Mexico. And,
yeah, exactly.
Yes, like just think about, like, the oil spills and stuff that have happened, and
I mean,
there's all sorts of different negative. I'd rather not too, but like it is a thing, you know. But like I do definitely agree that, like, we have done some serious damage to ecosystems around, you know, in certain areas, especially in certain areas. But like, could we do better? Yeah, we could. You know, like
of course. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to address it now rather than later, right? But I mean, again, it's just like unifying all those people, right? Like, how are we going to unify 500 million people and all that stuff? It's hard, but it's not, in this case, to do what's right and help us, like, you know, make our food cleaner and, you know, with the sea, and then just have our ecological footprint be less of an impact. I mean, of course you're going to be in on it.
And the group of people, or the one person, I don't really know, like whoever like fabricated this set of this list, you know, to be presented to you know, presumably later generations after a great catastrophe. It seems like they were just like, they just wanted to make things like simple, like make things like I don't know, like they wanted to put towards like a perspective that would make things, you know, as, I don't know, like controllable, or like, you know, as reasonable as possible from their perspective, you know. And it definitely seems like whoever like came up with this list, like was not just religious, but like they were thinking about like what could possibly make like the human race as good as it could be from their perspective. I'm not saying that like it's the right perspective, you know what I mean? But like, I don't know. It's like I said before, like some of these things I kind of agree with, but like they're so broad and vague. It's like, well, how do you even like accomplish any of these things? You know, it seems pretty unreasonable in some, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Yes, some of it sounds good on its face, but then like when you actually think about how do you actually accomplish some of these things, if it were even a good thing to try to accomplish, I couldn't tell you how to do it. I don't know, man. Like I think like I said before, I think like throughout like different societies throughout the world, even if there were 500 million people only left on the face of the earth after a great catastrophe, there's still too many different perspectives and too many like religions and morals that people would not diverge from. You know what I mean? Like
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It depends. It depends on what your morals are. You know what I mean?
It'd have to be the convincing argument with all of it, right? I mean, going forward, I mean, all the babies being born and all the new people that are forming their opinion of the world and what's right and what's wrong, that they would have to be strongly convinced that this would be it because it's so coexistent in its description that it wants everybody to be happy, love each other, and just naive, respect everybody's own business.
That's
which again is awesome, right? But nobody's ever gonna.
Well, but
maybe I don't know.
Right? I do agree with Agent Anderson though when he says like in order for some of this stuff to happen, you'd really have to have a really major event, you know, that I mean that everybody in the world was affected by. You know what I mean? So like you'd have to have some kind of a major event, whatever it is, you know, whether it be like an asteroid or comet or something like impact, you know, or maybe aliens, you know, something like that, whatever it may be. Like you'd have to have some really big event that everybody would have to like basically like, you know, mentally like hit the reset button and say, okay, no, we need to get on the same page here in order to conquer this or deal with this situation, what have you, you know what I mean? And in order to keep on surviving and to keep the human race as a thing, you know, like it would have to take a worldwide event, you know, for all of us to get on the same page and to make these kind of rules and stuff like that. Like it would take a lot is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It would take quite a lot.
Yeah. So in addition to those 10 items inscribed, and did I say those, so that list of 10 things was inscribed in all of the languages I mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had that in multiple languages. There was also a tablet there's a stone tablet built into the ground a few feet west of the monument that identified it. It identified the languages used and certain facts like the size and weight of the stones, the astronomical features of the stones, the date of installation, the sponsors. It says there's a time capsule buried under this tablet, but later when they demolished everything, they dug underneath the tablet to look for the time capsule and they didn't find anything. And that kind of makes me wonder, like, did something happen at the end there where it was like they were unable to put the time capsule under there? Like maybe these guys, something happened or something that prevented them from doing that. I don't know. So the tablet reads, "The Georgia Guidestones, center cluster erected March 22, 1980. Let these be guidestones to an age of reason. Astronomical features: 1. Channel through stone indicates celestial pole. 2. Horizontal slot indicates annual travel of sun. 3. Sunbeam through capstone marks noontime throughout the year. Author R.C. Christian, in parentheses, a pseudonym. It's pseudonym misspelled." Again, how is that possible? They're making this with such high accuracy to where you can track stuff astronomically, and yet they misspell pseudonym. I know it's a funky word, but like how is that? And then they, you know, this tablet also has like for the time capsule, it says, you know, the date the time capsule is installed and the date you should exhume the time capsule, and those two areas are left blank. So I'm like, dude, was this last tablet? Seems like it was awfully rushed. You know, they didn't do the time capsule. They were misspelling words. It just seems kind of weird. It also lists the sponsors as a small group of Americans who seek the age of reason. Like, that doesn't sound good. Are they trying to bring it about? Or, you know, I don't know. The time capsule was supposed to be 6 feet underneath of it. And it says on there, time capsule placed 6 feet below this spot on blank to be opened on blank. And the blank is where they're supposed to inscribe that. And the physical data listed on here is all the particulars of the stone. And I looked at the numbers, and I don't know if there's any particular significance to the numbers, the weights, the dimensions, or whatever. I didn't see anything that caught my attention, but you never know. Maybe there's some sort of data encoded in the dimensions of the monument itself. That would not be unusual for that to be the case. You know, for example, like mathematical equations, or really anything could be encoded in the dimensions, but nothing jumped out at me. But I'm not really that great at math anyways, so I don't know.
Well, we haven't talked about conspiracy theories yet, but there is this guy, Van Smith, and this was kind of his pet project, and he was convinced that this was a white supremacist project, and it was tied to like the one world government. But more specifically, he thought that encoded in the tablets was the numerical value for the world's tallest building in Dubai before it was built. So then after it was built, he's like, look, I was right. This corresponds to these dimensions. I couldn't find the particulars, but I just thought that was interesting.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so there was some.
It doesn't really strike me personally as being like a white supremacist kind of a thing, but you never know. This language could be interpreted that way, like the 10 commandments on the stones. I call them commandments. No offense to any religious people out there, but the 10 guidelines will say, I guess you could interpret them as as a sort of a supremacist type message, I suppose.
You're guiding reproduction wisely.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
but I mean, it doesn't say, white people only. It just says guide reproduction, and diversity is right on there.
It's true.
It says diversity.
It's not my idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, go ahead, Agent Kruger.
No, I was going to say, what could you compare that to today's world, though? I mean, could you compare that to the Roe versus Wade situation? I don't not. It's
I don't know.
Just trying to also match other things with the current events.
Well, this guy, he thought
for you guys on that one.
He thought R.C. Christian was actually a doctor. He thought he was a very specific person from Iowa and a supporter of David Duke, who's like the former KKK Grand Master.
All right, so the land for the monument was eventually transferred to the ownership of Elbert County. So they bought the land from the farmers, and then at some point they transferred it to the county. So the government basically was the caretaker of this thing. In 1981, they had to surround the monument with barbed wire fencing because cattle had been using the stones as a scratching post. Now,
well, it seems like a damn good scratching post if I was a cattle.
That doesn't really have anything to do with anything. I just kind of thought it was hilarious, so I thought I'd mention it. And also, if this thing was built to withstand a catastrophe, but it can't handle a couple of cows scratching on it, I don't know if they really had that good of a plan, or the design of it was really that great, right? I don't know. Maybe they just wanted the cows out of there so tourists could come and see it or something. Who knows? They did. I would love
to have a cow there.
The Guidestones did become a moderately successful tourist attraction with an estimated 20,000 visitors a year. That's pretty. I mean, that's not like Disneyland levels, but it's pretty. It's a lot better than some things. It's not nothing. A couple of times over the years, I think we mentioned earlier, I found like 2 or 3 incidents where the stones were actually defaced with graffiti. And as a result of this, they actually put security cameras in the area. And the security cameras actually caught, well, we'll talk about that later maybe actually. So in 1986, a man published a book titled a person, we assume it's a man because they said that they're a man, but they published a book titled Common Sense Renewed, and it describes the ideology of the Guidestones. The book itself is actually somewhat difficult to find. Like I checked on Amazon and eBay and stuff. I didn't see any copies of it available, but it appears that, you could look online. I did find some like excerpts from it and some like PDFs and stuff in like the table of contents. The chapters have titles like The Georgia Guidestones, Cultural Evolution, Proposals for Improving Our Society, A Beginning for the New Age of Reason, On the Conversion of Russia, and To Make Partners of Rivals. and there's some pretty interesting titles on there.
I want to read more about the conversion of Russia. That sounds very interesting.
I know, right? So I did find some excerpts online. I was not able to find the entire book because I wanted to sort of skim through it. I didn't know about this book until earlier today when I was like, there's a whole book about the Georgia Guidestones. And it was supposedly written by the guy, the Robert C. Christian guy, claims to have written it. But since he was anonymous in the first place, we don't know that for sure. It could have just been some random internet troll who wanted to publish a book and said, well, I'm going to pretend to be this guy. We don't know for sure. But supposedly it was written by the guy who commissioned it in the first place. So here's an excerpt that I got from online from one of the chapters. Sometimes we must choose the least evil within an array of evils. Certain abortions may be lesser evils than available alternatives and thus be morally defensible. Hopefully, the development of absolutely effective methods for avoiding unwanted pregnancies will make these questions irrelevant. Our reproduction will become fully controllable through humane and rational means. Failure to utilize those means may ultimately be the greatest evil of all. In these delicate areas of moral judgment, humanity must rely on the collective conscience of our race. No single individual or group should impose its position on others until a consensus has been developed from the best informed and most compassionate spokesman from all groups. And you're like, wait a minute here. There's a lot of problems here. This little excerpt, right? Like, hold on there just for a second. And just like the 10 guidelines, it has this stuff in there that sounds like a great idea. It sounds great on the surface, some of it. Then you're like, wait a minute, but how would you actually do that? Like how would you actually enact that stuff?
And enforce it.
Yeah, enforce it. Like what about a group of people, like let's say Catholics, who are against birth control? And I'm not Catholic, but I can't say that they're wrong. I'm not willing to say that those people are wrong in their beliefs. You know what I mean? So how do you enforce that on a group of people who are absolutely opposed to what you're suggesting and they will never agree with it?
You put it in the water.
I guess so. Well, that's what I'm saying is it comes down to some groups of people, you will have to force them to fall in line. They will not compromise with some of these things, and that's why these things are so problematic. So another excerpt is, any nation may supplement the international police force with its own internal security forces, provided that these military organizations are incapable of posing a threat to others. Confining national armies within their own territories is a duty which must be assumed by the larger family of nations. This alone will prevent most wars. And again, like this on the surface, this sounds great. It sounds fantastic, preventing wars and all that stuff. But how do you actually do it? How do you make sure, like I was not able to find the full text of the book, but I did find somebody who sort of wrote like a little mini review on it. And they said that according to this person, now this is like third-party info, so take it with a grain of salt. But they said that the author in general is in favor of a strong one-world government and also a proponent of mass sterilization programs. And this is from the book. And he believes that the state should be able to regulate who has children. And they use flowery language to sell these ideas and make them seem more palatable, such as every child must be wanted, needed, and loved, and we believe each human being has a purpose and stuff like that. So they use this, to sell these pretty nefarious ideas. They use some very positive sounding language. But again, I haven't been able to find a copy of the book, so that may not be totally accurate, but that I did find somebody who had read the whole book who said that this is basically the general gist of it. But yeah, so but my general impression, though, surprisingly, is despite the ideas themselves being sort of impossible to make them happen, the author does seem to be well-intentioned. But again, that could just be some, the way they're selling it. That doesn't mean they actually are well-intentioned. But so yeah, let's get to some conspiracy theories that Agent Ether has for us, and then maybe we'll talk about general thoughts and maybe talk about the recent event where it was destroyed and that kind of stuff. So what do you got for us, Agent Ether?
I have one Mark Dice, aka Mark Schuldis, aka Mark Connor, and he's a Republican. He's been on a lot of like social media. I read he was the first YouTuber to hit 1 million views. I don't know if that's true or not. It seems
I've heard that
me.
name before, Mark Dice. Is he one of those guys? Some of his videos, he's like, he did like some of those, like the man on the street, like asking people random questions and stuff, just like random people.
I don't think so. He started this activist group, this Christian activist group called The Resistance, and they were the people who wanted to boycott Starbucks because they brought back their old logo with the mermaid holding her own legs with her breasts, hidden by her hair. That was the group that said they should boycott Starbucks. All good Christians should.
Very naughty.
Yes. So he's a pundit, he's an author, and in May 2005, he actually called for the destruction of the Guidestones. He said they should be smashed into 1 million pieces, and the rubble should be used as a construction project.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one, yeah.
He said they had deep satanic origins, and the people who built them must belong to a Luciferian society. He says the elites are planning to develop life extension technology to stop the aging process. And basically, they're worried that the population's going to get so high, the elite won't be able to keep those resources for themselves.
Now, here's why I think that guy's actually part of the satanic cult, is because he wanted to destroy them and use the pieces to build more stuff, right? But if this is a satanic evil monument and you use those satanic pieces to build more buildings, what's going to happen to those new buildings? They're going to become satanic too, right? It's going to spread like a virus.
Sure.
No, I don't know.
So others will refer to these 10 guidelines as the 10 commandments of the Antichrist.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So we have one, Reagan Davis. He's a Christian minister at Lamb and the Light Ministries. And he thinks this is all tied to eugenics, which we discussed, but specifically that it's been predicted in the book of Revelations. He says the Bible tells us Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, and that his servants disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. He goes on to say, isn't it interesting that the man who financed the Guidestones called himself R.C. Christian? Is that a coincidence or a revelation?
And was that the guy who came up with that the name actually stood for something else, like a different person or something? I forget.
I don't think so. He just said, let's see what else he says. He said the monument was paid for by the New Age movement, which was a conglomerate of international humanist societies, to prepare the way for the coming of Lord Maitreya, a Messiah who will save the world. Now, the New Age movement was popular during the 60s, the 70s, but by the 80s, it had really lost its momentum. And this guy's writing, I think this was like 2005. So by the time he started writing about this and these ideas, really that movement had completely died out.
Yeah, I mean, you don't meet too many new, I keep thinking of new wave, like the 80s music, but yeah, there's not that many proponents left of that. I mean, I've never met one that I can think of.
No, me neither. Very crystal, hippie, new agey sort of thing.
They're probably still out there somewhere, I suppose.
And then before I mentioned Mr. Van Smith, and he thought also that this represented the new Tower of Babel. Now, in case you haven't heard of the Tower of Babel, it's in biblical literature. It was this structure that was built after the flood. It was really big. It was supposed to be like the biggest thing ever built. And the people who were building it basically said that its tops would go into the heavens and be the greatest and mightiest city on heaven or earth. And so in order to stop people from doing this, God gave out many languages to the workers so they could no longer understand one another and complete the city. And so the people were dispersed over the face of the earth. So somehow these Guidestones are very similar. Like the end result is supposed to be similar.
So in the story, the biblical story, the people spoke one language and God prevented that from happening. So God split up the languages.
Yeah.
So then on the Guidestones, them saying there should be a single language is sort of undoing that.
I don't know. That's just what this guy said. It was
that could be that does make a certain amount of sense. I could see how a Christian person might look at that and be like, that's not quite right. That's not what God wanted, Right. I could see that. Yeah.
So other theories are because one of the languages is in Hebrew, it's some Zionist design and intent for the New World Order specifically. That doesn't make sense to me because it's also in Arabic, but all right.
And Chinese and
right.
And Hindi and
right.
Yeah.
And then Alex Jones actually has a film about it, Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement. And he thought that it was a depopulation program sponsored by the world's financial elites.
I mean, why not?
They're making the frogs gay.
Yeah. And they're starting with the Georgia Guidestones.
All right. And I only saw this in 2 places. And I just want to say, I don't believe it. I don't want to be offensive. But apparently it was, an ancient sacred ground for the Hopi and Cherokee Indians. And the ancient shamans said that there were signs that would foretell the time of a 5th world or a new age and when it would begin. And the ancient prophecies state that when a stone tablet are returned to the center of the world, the new age will begin. So, yeah.
I don't know what that means, man.
With that information, what you will.
Well, apparently they called the area Al-Yeli Alohi, which means the center of the world. So what this is saying is these stone tablets have been brought to this area, which they call the center of the world. And so it's a sign of basically, either, let's see, I don't know, you could interpret it 5th world, so end times, or the beginning of a new age.
Interesting. I did not see that one. That's pretty interesting.
I think someone made it up.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, probably. That would check out. Yeah.
And finally, ties to the UN. So currently the UN has an agenda. It's really long. It's like 86 pages, and I tried to get through it. But basically it comes down to 6 different parts: global solidarity for the common good, including actions against climate change and COVID; renew social contract for the common good, including universal healthcare, education, and the internet; end the war on science and the infodemic; change how we measure prosperity. I think it means that a lot of the information out there, like let's say through Twitter or Facebook, they're like, it's not true. We need to curtail this war on science.
There's a lot of misinformation out there.
A lot of misinformation, yeah. But for it to be part of the UN agenda, I found that kind of disturbing.
Well, it's like they're not going to tell you the truth either, but they just want you to believe their version of the truth, right?
Right. And part of the agenda was, now is the time for a stronger, more networked and inclusive multilateral system anchored within the United Nations. They also wanted to have a reformed international tax system. So I'm just mentioning all this because I don't know much about the UN. So I'm like, what are they doing over there? And how is this related to these guidelines? And some people see a relationship between the agenda when you kind of read about it and the 10 guidelines that are on the granite, because a lot of people say the UN actually wants to depopulate the planet. And if you look at what they want to do in terms of sustainable development, they do want to bring, let's say, birth control to places in Africa where you have population explosions. But at the same time, they also want to provide resources to those people, like education and outreach and housing. So I don't know, but that's a big one. A lot of people think the UN is involved in depopulation.
Hell if I know.
Yeah.
All I know is if you have a population explosion, I mean, you're going to have a bunch of people who are getting down with the get down. There's gonna be plenty of explosions all over the damn place, and
sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah, it could be. It might end up, working out for the, it might not be so good for us eventually, but we'll have fun doing it.
Well, we already have population declining in pretty much every nation on Earth. I mean, we're going to peak.
A lot of the Western countries.
Yeah, we're still going to peak, even with the explosion of the birth rate in Africa and Asia. The world population will peak and then start to decline. So if we curtail population growth in those countries, we're going to see a huge change, and we'll reach the peak, I think, more quickly before it starts to go down. At the same time, it's really bad for the economy when the birth rate's so low because you can't replace workers. I mean, I think you're seeing the baby boomer population is retiring over here because of COVID, and you just don't have enough workers to replace them. So it becomes a problem.
So are those your conspiracies you had for us, Agent Ether?
I don't know if I can pronounce this. Rosicrucians?
Oh, yeah, Rosicrucians, yeah.
Okay, that was just the last conspiracy theory that I saw, was that somehow they're working to create planetary chaos, and as the hidden hand that controls the events over centuries, they are giving us this great monument? Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
That's the last conspiracy theory.
That's kind of a weak sauce conspiracy there.
It's not mine. It was this was by J. Widener.
You're talking about the Rosicrucians. I mean,
that's what it says.
I'd want. Oh yeah, I've heard of them. I'd want something a little more wild and crazy than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. It's all tied up in Freemasonry. You know, the kind of the typical conspiracy stuff, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well, they're responsible for the New World Order, and it's tied in with Freemasonry, and the New World Order created these, you know, this monument, and that's it. That's what I have.
Okay. Well, those are some pretty good conspiracies you got there.
Yes.
All right. And the reason, like I said earlier, the whole reason we're talking about this thing in the first place, I mean, it was on the list, but I mean, there's other stuff on the list, and this was not necessarily a priority until on July 6th, 2022, which is not that long ago. That was just this month. An explosion damaged the Guidestones, like I said, and that was on July 6th. And that's why we're talking about it, because after the explosion, they had to demolish it. And I was like, well, you know, I guess we should just talk about this because it's, you know, it's a current event, really, you know, which it was not a current event, and now it is. One recent event that happened was a 2022 Republican candidate in the Georgia governor primaries named Candace Taylor made the removal of the Guidestones part of her campaign, claiming they were satanic. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean anything. I'm not saying that Candace Taylor went and destroyed this, but if you have a public official or a public figure who makes a statement like that, or, you know, makes that part of their platform,
it's inspirational.
Sometimes that can encourage people who are not necessarily even related to this person in any way, shape, or form, probably never even met them, but that can encourage somebody in the public to take matters into their own hands. And I'm wondering if that's what happened here, is that because she made it, and this is not the first person who has made it a public issue, but because she made it a public issue and said it was satanic and we need to get rid of it, maybe that encouraged somebody out there to take matters into their own hands and actually blow it up.
Somebody
radical.
Somebody that either had explosives or knew how to make them.
Like, right, exactly.
Like there's plenty of the footage out there that you can go even on just go on YouTube. You can watch pretty much the whole thing. Like you see, like I saw footage that like you see somebody walking up to the structure and then they run away real fast, and then shortly after there's an explosion. So it seems to me like whatever like they used, it was pretty powerful in order to demolish like one of these granite slabs, you know, and then make the whole other structure, the entirety of the structure, unstable. So they had to take it down. But like whatever they used was pretty powerful. It seems like a pretty powerful explosion. And also there's videotape of what it looks like a 4-door sedan, like it looks like it's like a silver or gray color, driving away from the area. And like I can't, like the footage isn't great, you know what I mean? It's kind of shitty footage. So I couldn't tell what kind of car it was. it looked just like a 4-door sedan, a large sedan. You know, it wasn't like a small vehicle. It was a 4-door sedan. Maybe it was a Lincoln, or maybe it was, you know, who knows what it was. You know what I mean? It could have been a 4-door Honda Accord for all I know. You know what I mean?
I feel like
but
whoever did
definitely
this
looked like a Ford
is not going to keep it to themselves. I think eventually we'll figure out who it was, because they're going to go around and tell people about it.
Yeah. On the other hand, it seems like there's an awful lot of people in the area who did not want these things around, and the government probably doesn't care to have it around, even though it's good for tourism. But it's just like a problem that they have to constantly deal with. So the government might be very happy that it's gone. A lot of people didn't want it there because it was investigated by, I think, the county sheriff's office and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, like the GBI. And they have 0 suspects and 0 leads. I'm like, really? You got the dang thing on tape. It's a tourist attraction. You think they'd have leads or something, or suspects, but apparently they found absolutely 0, and they demolished it the same day. So they couldn't have,
same day.
Yeah,
they did it real fast. Yeah,
they couldn't have done.
It's almost like they already had the equipment set up to do that job.
Right.
You know, like,
yeah, it just to line up the backhoe or whatever it is that they used to knock it over would have taken more than a day. So it seems like there was. It seems like there's not really the political will to find whoever did this, and it seems to me like probably the government there, you know, using the term loosely, or people within the government, it seems like they didn't want this thing, and it might even be an inside job. You know, who knows? But I don't think they're ever going to find who did this, because I don't think they care. You know, I think they wanted it gone.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a convenience. You know what I mean? Like it's convenient for them to have this gone, like you said, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, now I can't visit it.
I know. Isn't that a bummer?
I don't know what else I'd be doing over
there, dude.
In Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some other trouble you can get yourself into.
But yeah, but like ETA was saying, we got it. We got them on video. We got it on video, guys, and we can't figure out who did it.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing is on video.
And there's
you have somebody walking up or running up to the they walked up to the Georgia Guidestones. They placed something, and it seems like one person. The footage is really grainy and like really it's not great quality, you know. But like you see somebody walk up to it, place something, and then run away. They definitely ran away, you know. And then the explosion happens, and then also on a different camera, and they had these cameras placed because of you know, people spray painting and then like defacing, you know, these granite structures, and that's the reason why you have the cameras there. But like the whole thing is basically caught on camera. It's just not great quality, and like you can't. I with the car and stuff, like I don't think you can really make out like the like, you know, the license plate or anything like that. But like there's enough footage there to where you would think like some kind of like investigation would be capable of finding out like something, you know what I mean? Like, as you know, like, I don't know, but nothing has been found out yet, as far as I know, you know, like as far as who did it, or nobody has claimed, you know, responsibility for this.
I guess attack. there's bigger things going on in the world, in the United States, to be investigating and worrying about anyways.
Yeah, but so we're recording this.
Yeah.
We're recording this on, what's today, the 19th. So this happened on the 6th, and there's still not a single suspect? You got to be kidding me, dude. Like, seriously. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, you would think there would be at least somewhat of enough evidence there to you know, suspect somebody.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know. Like I said, nobody has taken responsibility for this attack, but like, I don't know. It's just like, you'd think that they would know something about it.
Yeah.
Rather than nothing.
And that's what... That's why I think
it happened, and that's about it.
That's why I think that they're not trying all that hard. You know what I mean? To find who did this. Yeah. I think that, you know, the government in the area, I think they wanted it gone. And we're talking about an area that's pretty strongly Christian, from what I understand. So I think that probably a lot of people in government are glad that it's gone, you know? But yeah, so let's kind of wrap it up. Let's give our our final thoughts here. So I think that it was probably destroyed by, a Christian one way or another. And I think, so here's what I think about the stones in general. It was just kind of probably built by a rich weirdo who claimed to be part of a group. We don't know if he was part of a group or not, but there's, at least that one dude. And the Guidestones are just rules to make a better world after the apocalypse. Maybe they watched too many post-apocalyptic movies or something. There's a lot of those back in the day. It's sad that it was destroyed. It was just this cool, weird thing, and now it's gone. We don't need to agree with its message. We'll never be able to see it except for pictures. It's sad that a crazy fundamentalist destroyed something that would have become a historic monument. At some point, things like the Guidestones becomes the property of everybody. It's just a community or a worldwide thing. It becomes a historic site. And because one asshole took it from us, we can't no longer go and see it. Can't we just say that we don't agree with the message and even use it as an example of a misguided good intentions? Do we have to level everything we don't agree with? Because if this was the case, the whole world would be leveled. And ironically, this is exactly the sort of thing that the Guidestones were trying to prevent. And that's kind of my little end of show rant there. It's like,
you had that written down, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
that was very well done.
Well said. Well said, sir.
Well said. Yeah, you took the words right out of our mouths.
Or to summarize, come on.
Come on,
that's
man.
pretty much my final thoughts.
What the hell?
Yeah.
I actually think
I agree. I'm sorry. I agree 100%. Like, I don't think I could say it any better, really,
Yeah. Agent Ether, were you about to say something there?
I was going to say, I actually think it was a group of people. It's a lot of money to come up with one individual representing himself. I just find it unlikely. I think he probably did represent a group of people, or at the very least, he represented someone else who was giving the money anonymously.
Yeah, maybe it was like a method actor and they just hired some random dude to play the...
I just can't believe that they did banking without knowing his actual identity. I mean, that just wouldn't happen nowadays. I don't care how much money was involved.
That's actually a whole part of the story we left out that I don't know, maybe get into another time because it's getting a little long here in the episode. But that is another interesting part of the story, how they were able to do that.
Yeah, they're just like, okay, we'll take your money.
Yeah,
we'll go ahead and do it. And as far as the bombing goes, also, I think probably the work of a group. I don't think it was an individual.
Yeah, that's probably, that checks out, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it strange.